Welcome, everyone. If you haven't done so already, please share something your school or district is doing to support students' success. Drop it in the chat. We want to get to celebrate with you. All right. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I think we're ready. Well, again, welcome everyone to the Grad Partnerships Community of Practice webinar series here this afternoon, this morning, wherever you are in this country. We are so happy that you have joined us this afternoon. Today, we're going to be focusing on an introduction to student success systems. And if we could go ahead and continue to admit folks into the session, we're going to move on into what just a brief overview of the Grad Partnership itself. Our mission at the Grad Partnership is to partner with wonderful people like you and school communities like yours to use high quality student success systems so that all students are ready for their wonderful futures. Now, as far as the Grad Partnership is concerned, we are a consortium of 9 partner organizations, as you can see on this slide. Each of these organizations comes to this partnership with decades of experiences working directly with schools, with school districts, even with state departments of education. And we all specialize in supporting educators like you to implement early warning systems, on-track systems, MTSS systems, and other student support and school improvement systems across the nation. So why are we here in the Grad Partnership COP, or Community of Practice? In essence, our objectives for this series focuses on 2 things. First, it's building awareness and action for effective student success systems. And then secondly, to build community amongst all of us wonderful people here today. Now, your facilitators for this journey are myself. I'm Chris Payne. I am the executive director at the Network for College Success here in Chicago at the University of Chicago. Also joining us as a facilitator will be the Sarah Howard, also from the Network for College Success. She serves as our Director of Professional Learning. Supporting us on our tech team, we have Sophia, we have Mallory, and we have Jen from the Hatcher Group. We are so happy that all of you have joined us today. A few fun facts about us, 2 facilitators. We are, well, between us, we have elementary, middle school, and high school experience. We have been teachers. We are both former principals and starters of schools in Chicago. We averaged 30 plus years in education, and we have been coaching principals for over a decade. So we are so excited, so stoked to be with you all today. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Sarah.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for spending a little time of your Wednesday with us. So the first thing we want to do is just see who's in the room. If you could please, in the chat, share your name, what organization you're with, and where in the country you are located. Chris and I are here in Chicago. I see you, Mr. Clapper. Dr. Ruben Clapper, pardon me.
We have Detroit Lakes represented in the house as well. Detroit Lakes,
yes.
Minnesota.
All right, Minnesota. That's funny. Detroit Lakes, Minnesota. Trying to mess with our brains. California, West Coast in the house. And the Rocky Mountains. Yes.
Hi, Michelle from Everyone Graduate Center, working from New Mexico. Welcome.
East Coast, New York. All right, I love it. Look, we are well represented. Yes. Got the South, got the Southwest.
We've got Tucson, Arizona in the house too, Sarah.
Yes, yes. All right, well, so this should be a really powerful conversation. Hi, Dan Halen. Because we'll have multiple perspectives on the work that we're going to discuss together today. So coming together as a community, we want to have some agreements about how we engage with each other. So the first one is We Not Me just want to say a little about that the idea is that we want to hear from as many of these multiple perspectives as we can. So we make our interventions short so that we can hear what our colleagues have to say as well. We are not going to resolve the problems in the education world in this 1 hour. So we accept non-closure. The other thing is that we say at NCS, we take the stories stay in, but the learning goes out. So the idea is we can take what we get from this, but we leave other people's details here in the community. And then I will just say, Chris and I do our best to bring that joy, and we hope that your energy comes to meet us in that way. So our friends are going to drop in the chat right now our activity guide, and you can click that. It'll ask you to make a copy, and it has little pieces that we're going to use throughout the session today so that if the slide moves on, you still have the content and it's easy to follow along. Today we are, next slide, here in the month of October, we're going to be doing this Introduction to Student Success Systems. It's the first in a 3-part series around data-informed reflection and action in student success systems. So we hope that you'll be able to come back for November and December to be part of the entire series. And maybe if we're fabulous enough, you'll bring friends with you next time.
Sarah, we're going to be fabulous enough.
I mean, I know, but we got to wait and see what the crowd thinks.
So everybody, let's go ahead and dive into the introduction to student success systems. You may be wondering, student success systems, where in the world did that term come from? First of all, student success systems are a way that we organize the school community to better support the academic progress and well-being of all of our young people. And this term was developed based on a lot of audience research that was conducted. And that research was comprised of input from teachers and principals, from families and caregivers, and from young people. And this term, student success systems, actually speaks to the urgent and important work of educating our young people in a way that continues to honor the excellence, the brilliance that they already bring to our school communities. And so with that, on this slide, you see an abbreviated definition of student success systems. You also have a copy of this same definition in your activity guide. What I'd like you to do is take about 90 seconds to look at this definition and highlight words or phrases that not only resonate with you, but also those that are pushing your thinking about what's possible in this work of educating our young people. So I'll give you about 90 seconds and then we'll move on and learn a little bit more. Alrighty, as we start to round off that time, you may have highlighted a lot, you may have highlighted a little. Whatever you highlighted, something that's standing out to you, can you just drop it in the chat so we can socialize what's coming up for people as we think about student success systems? See, student-centered mindset. Thanks, Krista. Yeah, the inclusivity of student success systems. Yes. How we look at collaborating with families and community partners. Like there's a need for that. Thank you for that. That it's unified and that it's transformative. Yes. It's about increasing capacity of existing student support efforts. Yes. So not looking at it through a deficit lens, but an asset framed lens. We already are doing some things around supporting our young people. And how does this increase our capacity to do that? Yeah. Thank you for sharing. Again, yes, unified system. All right, let's take all of this with us into the next slide. So, student success systems are basically comprised of four components, and these are essential components. I call them elements too. They are supportive. It's around supportive relationships. They are holistic in terms of taking real time, holistic, actionable data, doing something with that. Uh, these systems include adaptive analysis, response, and improvement, and they are centered also in a shared set of student-centered mindsets. Now, in order for all of this to happen in a student success system, if you notice on the slide, you see this box around the outer, around the periphery of it called enabling conditions. That's where we come in as leaders. We set the tone, we set the conditions. These enabling conditions include such things as self-reflection, modeling, celebrating the gifts that adults and young people are bringing to the community, and being really honest and transparent about the work that we are doing in an effort to elevate, amplify the brilliance of the young people in our schools. And so, with that being said, I'm going to turn it over to Sarah to share more about how the self-reflection and action tool, which you have a link to in your activity guide, how that's structured. So, Sarah, take it away.
All right. So I'm going to give a quick overview of these four elements, and then we're going to get into some self-assessment dialogue for most of the time we're together. Just to model the kind of thinking that we can do with this team self-assessment tool. So the tool is organized into four parts by each of the elements. And you can see that the first one is strong supportive relationships. This is really about relationships at all levels or all types of relationships in a school, whether it's between adults and students, which is the one that probably initially comes to mind. But we also want to think about how about student to student relationships, or adult to adult relationships, or school adults to caregivers? Have we created that sense of we're all in this together in all those types of relationships? So the first section has some guiding questions and look fors that help you think about the quality of relationships in your school. The second one is holistic, real-time, actionable data. And we mean, two things roughly here, two types of data. One is more like performance data. Are young people coming to school? How are their grades? What about their GPAs? What about their college enrollment? Like, what kind of performance behaviors are we seeing in young people? The other kind of data we mean is experience data. How are young people experience school? How about teachers? How about our caregivers? So what's the experience that we're having? The idea of holistic, real-time, and actionable, as a principal, I might look at data that is summary level that helps me understand the big trends. But for a student success team, I have to have data that is real time, that I can take action on in my classroom. After I look at it, I have ideas about what to do to really troubleshoot where the challenges are. So again, there's a section in the tool that gives you some guiding questions and look fors and helps think about what are the data practices we have that support our team's reflection. And then the third part is actually doing something with the data. So, what is our system for taking strategic improvement actions? Do we have a team? Do we have protocols? How do we progress monitor? What's our practice around that so that we can think about what's the data telling us? How could we learn more about that? What are we going to try? And then let's go see how did that work. So we have to have those routine cycles where we take action, see how it went, study, try again. And then finally, all of this has to be sort of supported by a foundation of these shared set of student-centered mindsets. And this is one of those things where people can get caught up thinking, well, we have to do all this work on mindsets before we get into looking at data or taking action. And just as the picture that Chris showed you earlier implies, these things are all related to each other and mutually reinforcing. So it isn't a one thing first and then the other. While we are looking at data, those conversations help us build those shared mindsets. So what we are going to do now is do a little practice self-assessing.
Well, so what we're going to do is there's going to be a poll that is about to appear on your screen, and it will contain all four of the elements of a student success system. We want you to note in what element is your school or district operating strongest. So take a moment and take the poll. Righty, 10-second countdown. All righty. Let's share our results. Wow, check that out, Sarah. A lot of folks are saying strong supportive relationships.
I love that because, as we know, that is the glue that holds it all together.
Indeed, indeed. And relationships without some actionable data, real time, hey, will just be relationships. We need some data too, so we know what we're talking about. So this is pretty cool. At this time, what we're going to do is we're going to do a pair share. And I want you to think about the following. What are you doing well in that element that you identified, and how do you know that it's working? As we pull you into these pair shares, please introduce yourselves, share the element that you noted as your strength, and then talk a little bit about, how you know that is a strength that's working for your young people. All right, we're going to go into these breakouts for approximately 10 minutes. And then when we come back, we'll do a waterfall chat to see what came out of that. One note, as we're going into these breakouts, if at any time you need to return to this main room from your breakout, make sure to select leave breakout room first and not leave meeting, which will actually close your Zoom. All right, we want to see your faces back in the space in 10 minutes, right? Welcome back. I see us as we're returning from these fascinating conversations. We're going to wait for the rest of our colleagues to join us.
10 seconds-ish.
Yep, here they come. They're coming in. Welcome back. Welcome back. Welcome back. Hey everybody. Hope you enjoyed your conversation in your pair and trio share. Before we move on to our next part of our session together, why don't you just drop in the chat one takeaway you took from your fascinating conversation with your partner or partners? One takeaway. And it's good to see so many familiar faces in there. Hi, Jennifer. Good to see you. Some of the things that are coming to the fore here in this chat, that you're doing very similar things all over the country. And it's nice to know that you're not alone. Right on.
Mhm.
While our work is in different capacities, we're all working to support our students who most need it, first generation, etc.
Love the note about connecting with young people to see why something might be happening rather than,
Mm-hmm.
generating those narratives in our head and looking at data to see how we can support teachers as well.
Yes, yes. And doubling down on the importance of student-centered mindsets. Beautiful, beautiful,
Oh, yes, cultivate.
wonderful.
All right. So we are going to flip the coin and do some thinking about what is our edge of growth. Where do we think we need to develop the most? And you're going to see another poll pop up. What do you think is your edge of growth? Love Rob's comment about non-blame solutions while people are thinking. Yes. All right. Interesting. Interesting. Let's show our data. So we think we got relationships going. We maybe could do some work on data and response system, but we're mostly like, what's going on with those shared mindsets? So we're gonna ask you to get into go back with your partner. You've just heard about what each other is doing well. And now what we want you to talk about is what's your biggest challenge in that element you identified? And what you tried, what are you learning about it? And I'll just give a nudge that to repeat something I said earlier, that we think student-centered mindsets happen in relationship to these other two elements, not as a separate activity. So encourage you as you're thinking about any one of those, maybe how they connect with another element. So what's the biggest challenge you're facing right now? What have you tried? What have you learned? We're going to take another 10 minutes. Make sure you're hearing from both people and do a little problem solving together. Oh, Chris, do we want to model a little conversation? Too late. Too late. Too late.
Work.
Welcome back, friends. So we would love if you would share with us in the chat something that you are thinking about trying or a big takeaway that you have now that you've had that conversation. What might you go back and do after having that conversation with your colleague? Give that some thought. Chris and I were also chatting about noticing that half of us identified shared set of mindsets as an edge of growth, and it got us looking into the tool. Chris wanted to raise up a couple of questions from the tool that could be helpful.
Indeed, yes. And I'm looking at this and I was thinking, how are we surfacing mindsets educators have about our young people? And then in looking at the self-reflection and action tool, and you have a link to this in your activity guide, there are a couple of questions that stand out to me. One is how often are our actions strength and acid based rather than driven by deficit framing? And another question that I'd like to munch on is, where are we in this quest for equity and fairness? So as we're thinking about developing a shared mindset for around our students, what they're capable of, let's start to ask ourselves these questions and enter a guided inquiry with our teams around it to surface, what assumptions folks may be making, what biases folks may have, and give ourselves an opportunity to start reframing some of that thinking so that we are asset based and strengths based in the way that we're approaching student success systems.
Yeah, I would just add that those questions Chris raises, like that could be a principal thinking about that. It could be a team lead. Or if you already have a team, you could take that to the team and make it a discussion prompt and really think collectively about where you are with that. So we're going to be quiet for a second and ask you to share with us what's one next step you're thinking about. Let's get specific and concrete where we can. What might you do? Throw it in the chat. I love that. Involve young people in the problem solving of issues they are having. Yes, please. Focus on that sense of agency for them.
Appreciate the comment around how data can sometimes be really overwhelming or demoralizing. So thinking about helping adults see that data in a way that reflects, that is a tool for reflection and helpful and supportive while working towards these workable solutions.
Right on.
I appreciate the phrase workable solutions.
Yes. Yes. So important not to drown ourselves in an intervention, right? Like if we come up with some support system that is onerous for the adults, it's hard to maintain. So we've got to find those solutions that are workable. Victoria, great issue to surface. Like what's a good starting point? As people are contemplating, we hope a few more of you will share your next step. We are going to ask our buddy Bob Balfans from the Everyone Graduates Center to help us think about what we should be keeping in mind as we go off to do some more of this work.
Right. Thank you, Sarah and Chris. Yeah, I just wanted to help us think a few minutes here about the question that just came out as we were sharing our next steps. This idea of this, it's easy to be overwhelmed in the current world we're in. That the level of student need post pandemic is really elevated and it's multidimensional. And we just recently released some data on chronic absenteeism. And, there are schools now where, there's 100, 200, 300 chronically absent kids. And that can seem overwhelming. How do I deal with 300 kids that are not coming on a regular basis? And, a couple of things we've learned really in dialogue and working with schools is, first, it is important to be hopeful. like, and to really recognize that there is a lot of collective wisdom within our schools and across our schools. And really it is avenues like this community of practice and others where, educators working together within their schools and across their schools have a lot of wisdom that can really be brought to bear to sort of create ways to, even in these challenging circumstances, to find ways for our students to get what they need to thrive. And sort of in working with schools on that, I just wanted to share three sort of things to keep top of mind to help us get away from being overwhelmed and towards that hope. The first is to really, take a holistic look at student need, which we've been talking about. If we think about it within our schools, many of them over time have developed multiple student support systems that all developed in response to one part of student need. So a lot of the work a lot of us did is we created on-track systems or early warning systems to help prevent school dropout. And then other folks focusing said we need to do some stuff to have an alternative to zero tolerance. Let's have positive behavior intervention support teams. And then we said, we have to worry about academics. Let's have MTSS systems. And then, we said, we have to get kids ready for something beyond high school. Let's have a college readiness team. And what the teachers told us when we did the interviews and dialogues and surveys with them is in a lot of schools, that's a lot of meetings for a lot of different unidimensions of a multidimensional problem. So really what we're advocating with student success teams and systems is a way to let's bring all that together into one unified approach. So we don't have to have 4 meetings for 4 different aspects of student needs, because most students have multiple needs, right? They don't have just one thing. So that's one thing is, try to create a more unified thing instead of having an individual meeting for each individual need. The second thing is this idea of school connectedness is a really strong way to just to do strong prevention and positive action. And what we know is when kids feel connected to school, not only they come to school more often, not only do better in school, but they're healthier, their mental health is stronger, they engage in fewer risky behaviors. And, the pandemic really undermined this idea of school connectedness, and it just doesn't rebound by itself. So we have to be proactive. And what folks have found is that just 4 things are true. Kids are connected to school. And these are things that all schools can do and all schools can easily keep track of. That, that a student believes there's an adult in the school that knows and cares about them as a person. That they have a supportive peer group. That sometime during the week they're engaged in something that's meaningful to them. That they think is beyond just, narrowly for my future, but I'm helping somebody else or I'm contributing to society. And they feel welcome in school for who they are. And if you think about it, if there's a place where there's someone in charge, an adult that wants you there, you got a supportive group of friends, you're doing something you think matters, and you feel welcome for who you are, you feel like you don't have to change to be welcome, that's a place you're going to try hard to get to, right? And not and not avoid if you can. So that's a very powerful way to sort of deal with a lot of these challenges in a very sort of proactive way. And then finally, tied to that, and this is a really good example of it, is think where can we be proactive and not reactive? And to recognize that one of the foundational mindsets of secondary schools that's left over from a prior century and 3 or 4 or 5 generations ago, but is still sort of built into the DNA of a lot of schools, is that we're reactive, not proactive. We don't do anything about attendance until a kid is quote unquote truant, and then they become somebody else's problem, right? We don't do anything about behavior or engagement until somehow someone says we have to suspend this kid and ask them to leave. We don't do anything about how kids are doing their classes until they fail them. And then we just say, try again under the same circumstances. That's the default. You'll still find it. With student success systems, we're saying, look at key indicator data and stay ahead of it. As soon as a kid has missed a couple days of school, talk to them and find out. Maybe they just had a cold. That's fine. Don't worry about it. Make sure they get their work done. But if something else has changed in their lives that is going to keep leading to attendance if not addressed, you're getting there sooner, not later. Don't wait for a kid to fail a test or a class. When they start, showing some signs of, doing less than they did before or, not turning work in, figure out then what's going on, right? That lets us keep ahead of it before the problem sort of, can metasize. To help us with that, and really to build the hope, we want to share a few other like tools you can use. So one tool we're going to put in the chat is we sort of said, can we put on 2 pages? There's a lot to think about here with the student success systems, and there are 4 components and their interaction. But we tried to put on 2 pages this idea of 6 things a principal can do to start, moving towards a student success system. And we'll put that in the chat, and we encourage you to share it with principals, and to give feedback so it gets better. But that's a way to sort of, how can we do something tomorrow, right, to get going, as opposed to we have to do a lot of thought and effort to sort of, build a complicated system. And then the other one we're going to share with you is we also then pooled sort of our collective wisdom in the grad partnership with the many, many schools we've been working with in many years, and try to put our best collective insights around chronic absenteeism, which we know is really sort of grown in magnitude in many places, again, to that scale where it can be 100, 200, 300 kids. And again, we put together some very concrete steps schools could do from lessons learned from schools that have had to deal with large numbers of kids that are chronically absent, right? Because we know many schools are experiencing that level of magnitude for the first time now. And that can seem really overwhelming. It's the first time you suddenly had 150 kids not coming to school on a regular basis. So this is good practical advice from schools on what to do. And the one thing I'll leave people with is the very first step is we know broadly kids don't come to school for 4 big buckets of reasons. There's something outside of school keeping them from being in school, right? It could be family issues, it could be work, it could be an assortment of things. It could be chronic illness, right, that's not being treated. Another group of things is students are avoiding something in school or the way to school, being teased, being bullied, all sorts of things. The third one is they've just become disengaged. They think they can get by in the 4-day plan. Like, if I go to school 4 out of 5 days, I'll do enough to pass. And I don't really see the value of being there every day. I'm just trying to endure this to get to the next stage. And the final one, and I think this is the one we really have to think through, and it may very well, because the point is these can all vary by place to what extent those buckets matter in your school. So you have to try to figure out who's in those buckets, what the scale is. The last one is just inaccurate information about the importance of regular attendance. Both students and parents tend to underestimate how much school has been missed by half. It's just a human thing. People say, how much school have you missed? You think about the last month. You don't think about accumulation over a year. And you're like, oh, last month I missed a Tuesday and a Thursday. That's not bad. That was just 2 days. I come to school most days. No worries. Not knowing that 2 days a month over 10 months is 20 days. So, it's not knowing. And one thing that's coming out of post-pandemic that we have to try to almost reestablish this habit of daily schooling is, both some kids and some parents sort of observed that their kids sort of did okay being home sometimes, being on the internet. And the sky didn't fall in. I mean, a lot of kids suffered in that virtual learning, but not all kids did. And it was an observation that they did okay. And more parents actually now are at home or working at home, so they don't have the fear of no one's going to be at home with the kids, so I have to send them to school. So it's like, I'm home, they're home. They don't want to go to school today, they can learn on the internet. So that's the final challenge, to really think about why kids aren't coming. It's something we can do tomorrow with those tools we gave you. And with that, I encourage you to keep coming to our community of practices so collectively we can build that hope to have the ability to sort of provide the supports our students need to thrive.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Bob, for sharing your words of wisdom. Hey, everybody, it's almost that time. Thank you so much on behalf of Grad Partnership. Thanks for joining us this afternoon. And we want to hear from you. So please complete the survey. There's a link that's being dropped into the chat, as well as the bit.ly on the screen and the QR code. Reminder, there are some guiding questions and descriptors for each of the essential elements of the student success system that we share with you today in that reflection and action tool. Remember, the hyperlink is in your activity guide. And then lastly, the next community of practice is going to be November 15th. And during that time, we're going to focus on shared mindsets for supportive relationships. Please bring a friend. We look forward to seeing you again soon. And make sure you subscribe to our newsletter for the latest community of practice details. Again, all of those links for the community of practice and such will be coming to you in an email. And you have some hyperlinks if you want to contact any of us, they're in your activity guide. So, on behalf of Grad Partnership, thanks so much. Have a wonderful rest of the day. And if you can complete the survey before you leave, we gladly appreciate it. Take care, everybody.